Hi, welcome back to my channel, Beautiful Minutia. If you're new here, my name is Tiffany, and today I am going to be talking about some 5-star predictions. So at the beginning of the first quarter, I made some 5-star predictions. So in this video, I'm going to tell you, were those books 5 stars or were they not? And then I'm going to make some predictions for the second quarter. I used to do this list annually, but now I do it quarterly instead, and I look over books that I'm already planning to read that quarter. So I'm not at the end of the year being like, oh my gosh, I made like 12 5-star predictions and I haven't read any of them. This is a better way to keep me on track and keep me accountable to make sure I'm actually reading these books. Okay, so we're going to start off with first quarter 5-star predictions. So the first book that I predicted would be 5 stars is The Italian by Anne Radcliffe. I read this in February for Febregency with Stephanie and Dia, and I read it in the midst of a really terrible reading slump. And I remember thinking at the time, I bet I would have liked this book more if I hadn't been in a slump, because it's a really fun book. It's very thrilling, mysterious, all the things. And I loved The Mysteries of Udolpho when I read it a few years ago. It ended up being like my second favorite book of the whole year. And it has a really slow beginning. And in the Italian, we just hit the ground running pretty much. So it doesn't have kind of that lag at the beginning. So I think a lot of people would probably enjoy the Italian more because it's more tightly paced and plotted. And I felt like the characters were very interesting. Some of them I liked, some of them I didn't like, but overall it was really enjoyable. A lot of twists and turns that I didn't predict or see coming. But I also didn't think that it really left that big of a mark on me, and I don't really think about it since I've finished it. So I think when I finished it, I either gave it 3 or 3.5 stars, and I still have similar feelings to that now. So I thought it was a fun time, but not an overly memorable time, unlike The Mysteries of Udolpho. The next one that I predicted would be 5 stars is Death Comes for the Archbishop by Willa Cather. I also read this in February for my in-person book club, and I was so excited to read it because at that point I had loved almost everything I had read by Willa Cather except for one of her short stories. So I was thrilled because My Antonia was one of my favorite books of the year last year, and then the year before I think Oh Pioneers made it into my top books as well. So I was just like super excited to read this. And unfortunately, I didn't really love it. I thought it was fine. I thought it had beautiful moments. There was a really interesting tension between the Catholicism in this book as these priests are coming to New Mexico and then encountering Native beliefs, whether they're beliefs of Native Americans or of like the Mexican people who are living there. And so there's some really interesting conversations there, some interesting comparisons there that I thought were well done. I thought the ending was really beautiful, but honestly, I wasn't invested in most of the stories, and I felt unfortunately kind of bored with some of it, which is not typically how I feel about Cather. The stories were really episodic, but so were the stories in My Antonia, and I didn't have the same response. I think it's because in My Antonia, it feels like the stories are building on each other, and I did not feel that way about Death Comes for the Archbishop. I felt like we could have had any anecdotal story of what's happening as they're visiting these different churches, and it would have been the same result. So I think I gave Death Comes for the Archbishop 3 stars. So far, not doing great with my predictions. The last one that I predicted would be 5 stars was Adam Bede by George Eliot. Daniel Deronda was one of my favorite books of last year. It was in my top 3, and I absolutely loved that book so much. And so I actually did not finish this book when I was supposed to. Finish it by the end of March. So that would have been the end of the first quarter, and I didn't finish it until we were I think 4 or 5 days into April. And so, yeah, so I technically finished this in second quarter, but it was a first quarter prediction. So you're getting actually pretty fresh thoughts with this video because I haven't even done a wrap up for this. But if you're part of my Patreon, you have actually already heard me talk about this because it was a vlog for my Patreon of books that are recommended to me. I do one every single month that one of them is recommended to me and thinks I'll enjoy, and then I do a full spoilery vlog for it. And I talked for almost 45 minutes about this book. I loved it. It was so deep and beautiful, and I love the way that George Eliot talks about human nature and the things that she brings up here, particularly about regret and faith and forgiveness, but also consequences, that just because you can be forgiven for something doesn't mean that it erases what you've done or erases the consequences for what you've done. So there was a lot of things I loved about this. It has one of my favorite characters now, Dinah, and Adam Bede was just incredible, like, figure of faith and love and representation of Christ in this novel. Just loved just about everything about it. There were things about the ending that I was slightly dissatisfied with. And so I'm kind of like, is this 4.5 stars or is it 5 stars? For the sake of the argument and for the sake of this video, I am going to say it's 5 stars, even though I think I did rate it 4.5 stars on Storygraph because I didn't consider it perfect, but my experience with this book was perfect. Like, it made me so happy the whole way through reading it. Well, I shouldn't say happy because parts of it are sad. And I actually like cried, like sobbed at one point reading this book. So I shouldn't say that it made me happy because not everything about it was happy, but I loved the pastoral writing and I had been in a major reading slump for like 2 months at the point where I started reading this book and it snapped me out of it. Like, I loved it and I didn't want to do anything else but read it and just loved it. Okay, so let's move into some predictions for the second quarter. I actually had a hard time narrowing down this list because I have quite a few books that I'm really excited to read in the second quarter. There were 7 books that I initially had, but I'm like, that feels like a lot. I'm going to narrow this down because that will be a lot to like wrap up in a future video. So instead, I have 4. The first one is The Hunchback of Notre Dame by Victor Hugo, which I am actually about to start or have started by the time this video comes out. So I loved Les Miserables when I read it, and I gave it 5 stars, even though I do think that there were issues with it, especially with some of the side tangents. I didn't think it was a perfect book, but I thought it was a masterpiece and well deserving of a 5-star rating. And I've heard multiple people tell me that they like Hunchback of Notre Dame more than Les Mis, and my brain can't even comprehend that. So I'm going into this with very high expectations, but I hope I don't let myself down with those expectations. I know that the plot moves more quickly than Les Mis, but I also know that the side tangents might not feel quite as relevant to me as Les Mis because the side tangents have a lot to do with architecture. And I'm like, I haven't really read any books that have to do with architecture, so I'm kind of like, will I think that's interesting like I did the side tangents in Les Mis? Or will I be like, oh, here we go again? But I know it has less side tangents than Les Mis too. So I don't know. I'm really excited to read it and hopefully it will be 5 stars. All that I know about it is what I remember from the Disney movie when I was a kid, and I know that that deviated a lot. The next book on this list is Thorny Hold by Mary Stewart. This is actually going to be the group read for my Patreon in May, and we read a Mary Stewart together last summer, 9 Coaches Waiting, and that actually made it into my top books of the year last year, even though I didn't give it 5 stars. But I had a 5-star reading experience with it, even though I was like, this book has got flaws, but I loved it so much. So I'm hoping that I'm going to love Thorny Hold even more, but we'll see. I don't know, but I'm just like so excited to read it. And actually it was one of Dia's books that she loved that she brought to our favorite book Zoom. We do that once a quarter on my Patreon. We'll get together that month and not do a group read, but instead bring our favorite books of the last like month or quarter or whatever and just chat about books we love. And this was one of the books she mentioned, which makes me even more excited to read it. Dia actually also recommended the next book on this list, and that's The Professor and the Housekeeper. And I actually don't know anything about the plot of this book, but I've really been enjoying translated literature, well, translated Asian literature, especially if it's cozy. And I feel like Japan does cozy literature so well and so much better than American cozy books. And I mean, if you love American cozy books, this is like no hate to you at all. I'm really glad. There are lots of people who do, and that's why I think it's so popular in the United States. But Japanese cozy literature has more realism to it and feels less cheesy, but also still feels like a hug in a book. So that's kind of what I am anticipating with this. So I really hope that I love it. And actually, it was one of my picks for my in-person book club. I think we're reading this in June, so it'll be towards the end of the quarter when I finally get to this one, but I really hope it's 5 stars. Also reading in June, and also inspired by Dia because I'm reading it with Dia, is The Country of the Pointed Firs by Sarah Orne Jewett, I think that's, it'll be on the screen. I don't know much about this either, but I know that Dia's read another book of hers, and her writing is like very beautiful, very centered around nature, I think. And I actually have an in-person friend that recently read this book and loved it. And she's like, oh my gosh, Tiffany, you are going to love this book. So I am really excited to read it because I am a sucker for any book that has beautiful nature descriptions. Like, that's going to hook me, and I'm going to be really happy while I'm reading it, regardless usually of what the plot is, unless the plot is absolutely like disgusting or something like that. But usually those books don't have beautiful nature descriptions, so I'm not really anticipating that being an issue, but I am really excited to read this one also. Well, those are my 5-star predictions for the second quarter, and maybe I will find that these predictions come back to bite me in the butt, kind of like the first quarter ones, because I don't know much about most of these books. I haven't looked up plots because I just don't want to be spoiled by descriptions. So if someone I know and trust has read them and enjoyed them, that's like all I need to know a lot of the time. And that's the case with every single book on this list. So I'm hoping that I enjoy them, and I'm hoping that I did a better job of predicting than I did the first quarter, because the first quarter felt like it was a given. I chose 3 authors that I was reading from in the first quarter that had favorite books of the year for me within the last year or two, and only one of them was one that I actually loved. The other 2 were like fine. They were fun or had moments that I enjoyed, but like they weren't what I was hoping for. So I really hope I did a better job of predicting in second quarter. I chose like a much more well-rounded list, I feel like, and only 2 of these are authors that I've read before. So I'm totally taking a shot in the dark with the last 2. If you've read any of the books that I talked about in this video, whether the ones that I read in first quarter or the ones I'm planning to read in second quarter, I would love to hear from you in the comments down below what your thoughts were. And as always, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please hit like and also subscribe so you can continue to see more bookish content from me. And I will see you again next time.